The first time the Union tried to fine us, we laughed. Not politely. Not diplomatically. We laughed the way only humans can, loud, layered, chaotic. The kind of laughter that multiplies when you try to suppress it. The decree arrived across every registered channel at precisely 0900 Coordinated Galactic Time. The seal of the Galactic Union shimmered in sterile violet above the text, rotating slowly, like a judgmental eye. Emergency Cultural Compliance Mandate 77A, immediate suspension and regulation of unauthorized meme propagation within and beyond Terran networks. They had classified memes as destabilizing cognitive artifacts. I remember staring at the message projected over my workstation in New Jakarta, the city's skyline flickering behind it. Cargo ships drifted between the towers like lazy metal whales. The world was quiet for exactly 12 seconds. Then someone screenshotted it. Within 3 minutes, the decree had been edited into a looped animation of the Union Chancellor's elongated face blinking in confusion, while bold, white letters flashed beneath it. When you try to ban memes. By the 5th minute, someone replaced the Chancellor's ceremonial staff with a rubber chicken. By the 10th, the Chancellor was dancing. The Union had spent centuries mastering diplomacy, economics, and war. They had never faced irony weaponized at planetary scale. I work for the Terran Cultural Exchange Bureau. Officially, my job is to monitor cross-species information flow, ensure nothing offensive slips into allied systems, keep misunderstandings from igniting trade disputes. Unofficially, I watch humanity's collective consciousness pulse in real time. That morning, it pulsed like a star about to go nova. The Union's problem wasn't that they didn't understand humor. It was that they didn't understand recursion. Human memes evolve faster than biological organisms. An image becomes a caption. The caption becomes a reaction. The reaction becomes a format. The format becomes a language. Within hours, the original source is irrelevant. Only the mutation matters. By 0930, 77A wasn't a regulation anymore. It was a punchline. Across TerraNet, people began tagging mundane inconveniences as violations of 77A. Coffee too hot? 77A. Missed your shuttle? 77A. Existential dread at 3 a.m.? Definitely 77A. The absurdity compounded itself. Entire threads formed where humans pretended to report themselves to Union authorities for possession of illegal vibes. Someone edited the Galactic Union flag into a crying emoji. I should have been worried. Instead, I felt the familiar, dangerous warmth of pride. The Union doesn't operate on speed. It operates on control. Their cultures are meticulously archived, curated, and standardized. Spontaneous viral phenomena are considered intellectual pathogens. At 1100, the second notice came. Noncompliance will result in sanctions, restricted bandwidth allocation, and suspension of Terran cultural export privileges. That was when things shifted. Memes are jokes. Sanctions are not. Trade routes with the Union account for 37% of Earth's off-world imports. Medical compounds. Reactor components. Atmospheric processors for our outer colonies. The laughter didn't stop. It sharpened. Someone compiled a montage of every time a Union representative had publicly praised human creative vibrancy. The clips were intercut with dramatic music and flashing captions. Regulate this. Another feed displayed a mock stock ticker labeled Galactic Union Sanity Index, plummeting every time a new meme variant appeared. The speed became exponential. Self-replicating templates auto-generated variations based on trending topics. AI remix engines stitched together absurd crossovers. Union officials photoshopped into ancient Terran cave paintings, overlaid with captions about early non-compliant ancestors. I watched analytics climb into numbers usually reserved for crisis alerts. The problem wasn't that humans were mocking the Union. It was that other species were watching. The Varelian student forums began sharing translated versions. The Stoic Korth Shipping Guild, who had never publicly joked about anything, circulated a subtle parody of their own bureaucratic codes labeled Korth Directive 77A, mandatory smiling. The Union had tried to isolate a phenomenon. Instead, they had broadcast it. At 1300, bandwidth throttling began. Terranet speeds dropped across Union-controlled relays for exactly 40 seconds. Then decentralized peer-to-peer networks activated, rerouting through independent asteroid relays and private merchant satellites. Human engineers had built redundancy into everything. We evolved on a hostile planet. We don't trust single points of failure. A new meme surged immediately. A dramatic image of Earth from orbit, text blazing across it. You cannot throttle chaos. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the global engagement map. It looked like a neural network firing uncontrollably, bright clusters flaring across continents, colonies, orbital stations. This wasn't just defiance. It was cultural combustion. At 1500, the Union Assembly scheduled an emergency session. Their mistake had been simple. They thought memes were content. They didn't realize memes are infrastructure. They carry dissent, solidarity, identity, humor in the face of existential threat. You don't regulate that without consequences. As the Union seal reappeared across every major channel, announcing deliberations on containment measures, my terminal began to vibrate with incoming cross-species traffic. Requests, translations, participation. The contagion had jumped containment. And for the first time in recorded galactic history, the Galactic Union was not setting the narrative. We were. And we were just getting started. By the second day, it stopped being funny. Not because the memes slowed. They didn't. If anything, they became more intricate, layered with inside references only a hyperconnected species could decode in milliseconds. Entire comedic dialects formed overnight. But beneath the humor, something heavier began to hum through the network, a low, electric tension. The Union moved from warnings to enforcement. Terran cultural exports were suspended at 0600. Our music archives, entertainment streams, educational feeds, cut from Union distribution hubs. Automated notices cited cognitive hazard mitigation. The language was clinical, almost gentle. It felt like a blockade. I arrived at the bureau to find half the staff already present, eyes rimmed with exhaustion, hollow screens casting pale light across anxious faces. Trade analytics scrolled in relentless columns. Outer colonies were reporting shipment delays. Pharmaceutical deliveries from the Heliox systems were flagged for review. The memes adapted instantly. A popular format showed a Union official carefully unplugging a cable labeled human culture, only for a chaotic explosion of wires to burst from every direction, reconnecting themselves. Caption: We brought adapters. I should have admired the resilience. Instead, I was reading the diplomatic feeds. Several mid-tier Union species had begun filing formal complaints, not against us, but against the Union itself. They argued that the censorship protocols were excessive, destabilizing interspecies discourse. The Varelians claimed that human meme exchange had increased student engagement by 42%. The Korth cited measurable morale boosts in long-haul shipping crews. The Union Assembly responded with silence. Silence is power in their culture. It signals deliberation, superiority, distance from emotional contagion. Humans filled that silence with noise. A viral thread emerged titled, Galactic Union Trying to Understand Humor? Live footage. It looped the same 3 seconds of a Union delegate blinking while captions speculated about buffering errors in their brains. Crude. Effective. Then something changed. At 1100, Union enforcement vessels entered low orbit above Luna. Not warships, compliance cruisers. Their hulls gleamed like polished bone against the darkness. Official statement: Inspection of unauthorized signal amplification arrays. Luna hosts Earth's largest independent relay cluster. The memes slowed. Not stopped. Slowed. There is a difference. A new image began circulating, stark and simple. A child drawing of Earth, surrounded by towering gray shapes labeled regulation. Beneath it, a single line. Why are they scared? That one spread differently. Not explosive. Not chaotic. Steady. People were starting to ask questions beyond the joke. I accessed restricted channels and watched as Union envoys boarded the Luna arrays. Their mandate was clear: disabled decentralized routing systems circumventing bandwidth controls. They didn't anticipate what they would find. Human networks are messy by design. Layers of redundancy woven through private hobbyist satellites, academic research stations, amateur radio clusters, even retrofitted mining drones. The enforcement teams reported nonlinear architecture. They requested schematics. There were none, because there was no central blueprint. Just millions of humans solving problems independently. By 1400, enforcement logs began to leak. Someone, probably a lunatic with a conscience and a dark sense of humor, streamed a redacted excerpt. It showed Union inspectors attempting to trace meme origin points, only to discover that each node redirected to hundreds of derivative nodes, which redirected to thousands more. A hydra of laughter. The next meme was brutal. An animated hydra, each head labeled with a different meme format. A Union blade slices one off. 10 more grow back. Caption: Cultural compliance update. But beneath the mockery, financial tremors began rippling outward. Independent traders feared sanctions escalation. Insurance rates spiked. Outer colony governors sent urgent messages to Earth's Central Council demanding de-escalation. I sat in the Bureau's observation chamber and watched Earth rotate on the central display. Blue oceans. Swirling clouds. So fragile from orbit. So loud from within. At 1700, the Union Chancellor finally addressed the galaxy. His voice was calm, resonant, practiced. Humanity's memetic proliferation constitutes an uncontrolled socio-cognitive cascade. We seek preservation of interstellar stability. Stability. The word echoed across networks. Within minutes, humans clipped the speech, isolating that single word. They paired it with footage of storms, revolutions, fireworks, toddlers taking first steps. Caption: We call this living. Engagement numbers shattered previous records. Even Union citizens began sharing anonymously, hiding behind encrypted channels. The contagion was no longer comedic defiance. It was ideological. The Union had attempted to regulate expression. Now, they were confronting something far more dangerous. A question spreading faster than any meme. Who decides what stability is worth? The first Union world went quiet 12 hours later. Not in protest. In absence. The planet Kethrael, a mid-tier administrative hub known for its rigid information hygiene, experienced a total network blackout at 3:17 Galactic Standard. No warning. No controlled shutdown notice. Just silence across every channel tied to the Union's cultural regulation grid. At first, the Assembly assumed sabotage. They were wrong. What collapsed wasn't infrastructure. It was engagement. For cycles, Kethrael's citizens had relied on tightly filtered streams. Content was curated, approved, smoothed of volatility. Humor existed, but it was sanctioned. Debate occurred, but within parameters. Emotional spikes were algorithmically dampened. Then humans happened. Not physically, digitally. Even after official bans, fragments of human memes slipped through. Screenshots. Reposts. Descriptions of jokes too strange to translate directly. Union youth on Kethrael began constructing their own versions, structured, cautious adaptations. Then the crackdown came. Local authorities enforced stricter filters in response to the Luna incident. Entire social sectors were flagged for memetic contamination risk. Accounts suspended. Forums archived. Creative subchannels deleted. Something broke. Because for the first time in generations, Kethrael's population had tasted unscripted discourse. The blackout wasn't a system failure. Citizens simply stopped logging in. Engagement metrics plummeted to statistical zero. Public forums emptied. Entertainment hubs reported no access attempts. Productivity modules showed increased physical assembly attendance, but silence in digital collaboration spaces. A society optimized for controlled interaction had been forced to confront organic expression. And when it was removed, they chose nothing. The Union Assembly called it temporary civic withdrawal. Humans called it something else. A meme surfaced within minutes. A pristine, empty Union Plaza. Text overlay. When you delete the internet, but forget about free will. But the tone was shifting again. Less mocking. More analytical. Human sociologists began live-streaming breakdowns of Kethral's engagement collapse. Psychologists discussed dopamine regulation in controlled environments. Cultural historians compared the event to Earth's own early network moderation crises. The most viral post wasn't even a joke. It was a simple graph showing Kethral's engagement spike following first contact with human meme streams, followed by a steep drop after regulatory intensification. Caption: "You can't unring a bell." On Earth, reactions were divided. Some celebrated. Proof the Union can't suppress culture. Others worried. We didn't mean to destabilize anyone. Because beneath the humor, something heavier was settling in. We hadn't just irritated a bureaucracy. We had disrupted an ecosystem. The Union responded predictably. Emergency session. Closed assembly. Restricted broadcast. But secrecy was a fragile shield in a connected galaxy. Leaked transcripts revealed heated arguments between member species. Smaller civilizations questioned the assumption that emotional variance equaled instability. Trade delegates warned that further crackdowns could trigger cascading disengagement across dependent worlds. Then the unthinkable happened. A second world reported partial civic withdrawal. Then a third. Not total blackouts. Selective silence. Citizens logging off official networks while creating underground peer-to-peer clusters modeled, ironically, after human decentralized architecture. They weren't copying our jokes. They were copying our structure. Luna's messy Hydra network was being studied, replicated, modified. The Union had tried to contain a cultural virus. Instead, they exported the cure to stagnation. On Earth, I sat in the Bureau's war room, though no one officially called it that, and watched real-time engagement maps flicker across half the galaxy. Red zones marked regulatory compliance. Blue zones marked organic activity. Blue was spreading. Not explosively. Steadily. The Chancellor addressed the Assembly again, his composure thinner this time. Human memetic systems introduce nonlinear unpredictability incompatible with Union equilibrium. Within seconds, humans clipped nonlinear unpredictability. They turned it into a badge. Shirts printed overnight. Profile banners updated. Outer colony cargo ships broadcast it as call signs. But something else emerged too. A quieter movement. Human creators began posting guides titled, "How to Meme Responsibly." Discussions about cultural context. Warnings about overload. Tutorials on building decentralized networks ethically. Because we were starting to understand the weight of what we'd triggered. This wasn't just rebellion through humor. It was a shift in how civilizations process thought. The tipping point came from an unexpected source. A Kethrael academic, anonymous but verified, released a public statement through encrypted channels. We did not collapse because of human memes. We collapsed because we realized we were afraid of them. The message went everywhere. Shared by humans. Shared by Union citizens. Shared even within restricted assembly corridors. Fear. Not instability. Fear of unpredictability. Fear of emotional variance. Fear of losing control over narrative. And suddenly, the question wasn't whether memes were dangerous. It was whether stagnation was. Across Earth, celebrations quieted. Across the Union, debates ignited. And for the first time since the crackdown began, the Assembly wasn't just trying to regulate humanity. They were trying to understand it. But understanding requires vulnerability. And the Galactic Union had never been built for that. The Union did not declare war. That would have been simpler. Instead, they did something far more dangerous. They invited humanity to speak. The announcement arrived through every major channel at once. Official, encrypted, civilian relay, even abandoned meme boards once flagged for contamination. A unified broadcast bearing the sigil of the Assembly. Representative delegation from Earth is requested to address the Cultural Stability Council regarding memetic proliferation and cross-civilizational impact. Translation. Explain yourselves. The chamber on Helion Prime was designed for intimidation. Endless vertical columns of luminous crystal. Acoustic dampeners engineered to erase emotional inflection. Representatives seated in concentric tiers, elevated by political weight. Human delegates chose not to adjust their audio profiles. They allowed breath, pauses, imperfect tone. The Union noticed. Earth sent 3 representatives, a sociologist, a systems engineer, and, against every diplomatic tradition, a comedian. When the final delegate was announced, a murmur rippled through the chamber. Occupation, comedian. The Chancellor's crest dimmed slightly. This is not an entertainment forum, he stated. The human comedian nodded. Exactly. Silence. The sociologist began first. Data projections filled the chamber air. Engagement graphs from Kethrail, longitudinal cultural resilience models from Earth's pre-digital era, case studies of information suppression across human history. Unpredictability is not chaos, she said. It is adaptation in motion. The systems engineer followed, outlining decentralized network architecture. Peer-to-peer mesh structures. Redundancy through fragmentation. Memes not as isolated artifacts, but as nodes in a living discourse web. When you banned a content, he explained, you didn't remove the impulse. You removed the outlet. Systems without release valves rupture. Union delegates whispered among themselves. Then the comedian stepped forward. He projected a single image into the chamber, a stylized graphic of the Union's Cultural Stability Council labeled, "This is fine," beneath a blazing galactic background. Several delegates stiffened. You think this is mockery, he began. It's not. It's empathy. He walked slowly across the speaking platform. On Earth, we learned something early. When systems grow too rigid, humor becomes pressure relief. It allows critique without immediate violence. It lets people feel seen without drawing weapons. He paused. You're not collapsing because of jokes. You're collapsing because your citizens finally experienced unscripted connection. The chamber's acoustic dampeners struggled to suppress the rising murmur. The Chancellor leaned forward. You assert that memetic expression strengthens civilizations? The sociologist answered. It exposes weaknesses before they become fractures. The engineer added, and it distributes agency. The comedian finished, and sometimes it just makes a bad day survivable. The assembly recessed for internal deliberation. Outside the chamber, the galaxy waited. On Earth, live commentary streams dissected every gesture. Meme production slowed, not from disinterest but anticipation. Even the loudest creators sensed the weight of the moment. Hours stretched into cycles. Then something unprecedented occurred. A Union subcommittee, mid-tier regulatory species known for doctrinal rigidity, released a public memorandum before the assembly concluded. It was brief. We request pilot integration of controlled memetic exchange within designated cultural zones. Controlled memetic exchange. Humans translated it instantly. They want a meme sandbox. Within minutes, Earth's networks exploded, not with ridicule, but with proposals. Guidelines. Cross-cultural translation teams. Context briefs. Volunteer moderators trained not in suppression, but in facilitation. The tone had shifted again. This wasn't rebellion anymore. It was negotiation. When the assembly reconvened, the Chancellor's voice carried less steel. The Union recognizes that total prohibition has produced measurable destabilization. However, unrestricted proliferation remains incompatible with collective equilibrium. The sociologist inclined her head. Equilibrium evolves. After hours of debate, a resolution formed. A pilot program across 3 volunteer worlds. Human meme exchange permitted within monitored cultural zones. No automatic deletion algorithms. No punitive engagement scoring. Instead, real-time discourse analysis and cooperative moderation teams composed of Union citizens and human advisors. The vote was not unanimous, but it passed. Across the galaxy, something subtle shifted. Not a victory parade. Not surrender. A test. On Kethrail, dormant networks flickered back to life. At first, cautiously. A Union citizen posted a simple adaptation of a human meme template. An image of 2 identical bureaucratic forms. Caption. Spot the difference. Below it, they are both approved. The post received thousands of reactions. Not outrage. Laughter. On Earth, The response was immediate but measured. Humans resisted flooding the zones. Instead, curated exchanges rolled out, explained formats, cultural annotations, collaborative creations. The comedian who spoke at the assembly posted only one message that day. First rule of Galactic Meme Club: read the room. It became the most shared post in Union history. Not because it was sharp, because it was respectful. For the first time since first contact, the Union wasn't trying to contain humanity. They were experimenting with becoming slightly more like it. And humanity, for the first time, understood that power wasn't in overwhelming the galaxy with noise. It was in knowing when to whisper. The collapse had begun with regulation. The recovery was beginning with trust. And somewhere in the vast, interconnected web between stars, unpredictability no longer looked like a threat. It looked like possibility. The pilot program was supposed to last one standard cycle. It lasted 3 days before the galaxy changed permanently. At first, the Union treated the cultural exchange zones like hazardous research sites. Observation panels monitored engagement metrics. Stability indexes updated in real time. Analysts braced for volatility spikes. They never came. Instead, something far more disruptive occurred. Co-creation. A Kethrail historian posted an annotated adaptation of a classic human meme format. It showed 2 images side by side. Left, a rigid crystalline structure labeled tradition. Right, the same structure refracted into a spectrum labeled interpretation. Caption: same light, different angle. Humans responded not with ridicule, but remix. Within hours, artists from Earth layered music, animation, and contextual explanations. The original creator was tagged, credited, invited into collaborative streams. Dialogue replaced reaction. Union observers flagged the interaction as anomalous. Cross-species engagement sustained beyond novelty threshold. Translation: they kept talking. On Helion Prime, the Cultural Stability Council convened again, not in crisis, but in confusion. The Chancellor studied the updated metrics. Emotional volatility has decreased, he said slowly. A data analyst confirmed. Intercivilizational hostility markers are down 12% across participating systems. Explain. The analyst hesitated. Shared humor appears to be functioning as a normalization bridge. Exposure to difference is no longer triggering defensive clustering. The term rippled through the chamber. Defensive clustering. For centuries, the Union had survived by minimizing variance. Cultural edges were sanded smooth to prevent friction. It had worked until it hadn't. The collapse hadn't begun when humans spread memes. It had begun when the Union tried to eliminate unpredictability entirely. On Earth, the mood was different. There were no victory banners. No triumphalism. Creators who once thrived on chaotic viral surges now participated in moderated exchanges. Context threads accompanied jokes. Cultural primers were embedded before punchlines. One popular human creator posted, "Meme responsibly. The galaxy is watching." It was half joke, half mission statement. The comedian who had addressed the assembly received an invitation to return, not as defendant, but consultant. He stood once more in the luminous chamber. "You expected us to weaponize humor," he said. "Sometimes we do. But mostly, we use it to survive ourselves." The Chancellor regarded him carefully. "And what prevents escalation?" The comedian smiled faintly. "Mutual embarrassment." Several delegates blinked. "When you laugh with someone," he explained, "it's harder to reduce them to an abstraction. Harder to declare them a threat." The sociologist expanded on the data. Cultural zones were evolving into shared spaces of experimentation. Union citizens began creating original formats, subtle, layered, distinct from human templates. Not imitation. Integration. The systems engineer proposed a structural shift, dissolve the temporary designation. Make memetic exchange an official, recognized layer of interstellar communication. There was resistance. There was fear. But there was also evidence. The vote to formalize the memetic accord passed with a narrower margin than the pilot program, but it passed. Across the Union, restrictions were recalibrated. Not erased. Balanced. Algorithmic deletion systems were replaced with adaptive moderation networks. Instead of suppressing deviation, they mapped it. Unpredictability became a monitored resource rather than a prohibited substance. On Kethrail, the historian who had posted the refracted crystal meme received a message from a human student. Your version was better than ours. The historian stared at the message for a long time before responding. Your version made ours possible. That exchange was archived by the Union as a landmark moment. Not because it was grand.
Because it was ordinary.
Months later, cultural analysts would identify the true turning point. It wasn't the assembly speech. It wasn't the pilot program. It was the first time a Union citizen created a meme that humans didn't fully understand. And instead of mocking it, they asked for explanation. Curiosity replaced superiority. The galaxy stabilized. Not into uniformity, into dynamic equilibrium. There were still disagreements, still misfires. Some exchanges sparked controversy, but the difference was structural. No one reached first for prohibition. They reached for context. The Union's great fear had been cultural erosion. What they discovered instead was expansion. Humanity had not dissolved their identities. It had forced them to confront fragility and then offered tools to strengthen it. In a quiet corner of Earth's network, an old, once banned meme resurfaced. An image of a burning galaxy. Caption: "This is fine." Below it, someone added a second panel. The flames were gone. Stars shimmered across a shared sky. New caption: "IT was never fine, but we can make it better." It spread across Union space without triggering a single stability alert. The cultural collapse the Union feared had transformed into something else entirely. Cultural evolution. And for the first time since humanity stepped onto the galactic stage, the Union understood a truth that Earth had learned through centuries of chaos, conflict, and creativity. Control preserves structure. Connection preserves civilization. The memes were never the threat. Silence was.